I am here with Ryan Rush, also known as Brick House Design. Ryan is a high-performance home builder here in the Houston area, builds some beautiful homes out here. And so, Ryan, tell me what it is that differentiates you from other builders in our area or other builders in general.
Sure. We have a little bit different of a business model than other builders in the area. We don't try to build as many houses as what we possibly can. We go for quality. And so we want the houses that we do build to be the very best ones we can possibly build. So we don't have a subcontracted superintendent. There's no college kid that's around just managing our jobs. It's actually me and my wife on every single one of our jobs.
Awesome. Great stuff. Well, hey, I'm anxious to take a look at this house. I know you guys are too, so let's get in and take a look, Ryan.
Let's do it.
Before we go in, Ryan, you've got to talk about these rocks. I know these are a hot topic on Instagram and social media, so let's talk about these rocks real quick.
Sure. The rocks are just a durability measure. You notice we've got a brick facade here. It's also painted. Last thing I want is to show like the bottom foot or two of dirt and splashback. We're in Houston. We get 52 inches of rain a year on average, some years upwards of 80 inches of rain. So we get a ton of rain. I don't want the side of my house to be wet. I don't want it to be dirty. I don't want it need it to be painted. So by putting these rocks in, it's kind of like the principle of oil. It's porosity, basically. And so the rocks tamp down on the splashback, but they allow the water to get away from the house really, really fast.
Awesome.
The best thing about the rocks right here is I'm 10 feet away and I don't even see them. They're invisible, but they still perform their function as we intended them to. All right, let's go take a look. So you notice that we're elevated right here. And so this is actually built in the 500-year flood zone. City of Houston requires us on new builds, and it's from a risk perspective, right, to elevate our new builds at the 500-foot flood zone per FEMA plus 2 feet. And then we went ahead and did 3 more inches on top of that, just sort of for some flexibility with tolerances and just so we're not cutting it super close to the standard.
So what I'm noticing is that as I'm walking in here, I know it's a pier and beam house, but it doesn't feel or sound like a pier and beam house to me. I walk into these pier and beam houses and everything feels just like a tiny bit rickety, a tiny bit hollow, but this feels solid. It sounds solid. And I would swear I was just walking on a slab right now if I didn't know any better.
Yeah, it feels like a slab, but actually because it's pier and beam, it's slightly more comfortable because it's all a wood structure. Nice. So this is highly engineered. We've got underneath this first story, there's 76 drilled concrete piers, going down 10 feet into the soil to get good bearing area.
Nice. And
then on top of the piers, there's basically a subfloor system. So the subfloor system here is almost the same as the subfloor system above our heads.
Okay.
So there's a system of trusses. This is all dimensional lumber down here, whereas that's trusses. And then top of it has 1/8" Advantech, super stiff. That's the best subfloor you can buy. And then we've got solid wood flooring on top of that.
Screwed?
Yeah.
Right on, right on. And we're going to take a look at that later?
We could, yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
Because I feel like this might be a running theme through here. We were talking about how everything lines up in straight lines. And so we're going to give you an example of that, and that'll probably pop up a lot more in this video. So show me that, Ryan, real quick.
If you come into this mudroom downstairs, you see the window is perfectly symmetric in this room, but look up at the ceiling. We've got that light right there perfectly lined up on the window. We've got that AC register right there and the exhaust fan. So there's a very, very clear intentional center line here. And we've got to make sure we plan the truss spacing properly to allow us to do things like this.
So I feel like details like that are in some respects maybe minimal, but it's about the planning, and it shows the level of planning that's going into the most minute detail. And if you're planning that detailed, then that's going to show up in other parts of the build, which are way more important structurally or performance wise. While this might just be visual, I think it's a great element, a great eye for detail, and just one of those things that makes what you do different than the others. Let's take a look at some other stuff. All right, so this is a pretty big place. It looks big from outside. What is the square footage of this place?
5,398 square feet.
That is a large house. That is a large house. It's interesting because it's in a neighborhood where we have obviously different size homes. You got some 1 story, some 2 stories. Some of them look like they're a lot bigger than others, but this one particularly looks large. But that's probably because it sits up so high and the brick runs all the way down to the ground. And so it gives this really kind of large look from the street.
Sure, sure. the thing is, what you see, the way this is built, is how all the houses will be built in the future.
Right.
And the rest of this neighborhood is an infill lot neighborhood, right? So all these houses were built in 1967, and so we're 4.5 feet higher than all these other houses. So
With that brick running all the way down, though, it doesn't like look like the house is sitting up on a platform like
No.
we see a lot of homes. It looks like they're just up on top of something, but I don't get that
Sure.
feel from out there.
And the reason we did that, a couple fold, we've got 2 doors. One of them is hidden, but we also dropped our windows all the way down to floor level. So when you're looking at it from the outside, those windows aren't 7 feet off the ground. They're 4.5 feet off the ground, which looks fairly standard.
Right. It makes a big difference because it doesn't give you that idea that this house is raised as much as it actually is.
Mm-mm. But from a risk and a durability perspective, that brick that goes all the way down, you've got 4.5 feet of freeboard that's not even part of the house,
That's awesome.
right?
Good stuff. All right, so you got to tell me something about this light fixture here because I first of all, I love it. It's beautiful, large, oversized for the room, but it looks exactly like the Death Star to me. So does this thing have a story or what's the deal with this light?
The story is my wife does all of our interior design, and my job as a builder is to figure out how to say yes to her designs.
Got it.
And she runs with free reign with all the design decisions. And I think it turned out great. We were thinking about doing some sort of textured plaster on the wall here because it's an office. It's right next to the front door. But just based on the light that this portrays and gives off, it actually puts a cool texture on the wall that's really subtle. You can see it a lot more at night.
Yeah, I can almost see it now, yeah.
Yeah, but it's cool. We've got a lot of really nice fixtures in this house. It's all visual comfort stuff.
Is your wife a Star Wars fan?
No.
Do you think she had the Death Star in mind when her
100% no, but if you want to tell yourself that,
you
can.
Yeah, I'm convinced. So one thing I'm noticing, Ryan, is that these doors, solid wood doors, everything is just solid as a rock, the hardware and the doors themselves. I'm loving this brass, even the hinges match. That's fantastic. But like even the closet doors are solid wood doors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we used to 5-6 years ago cheap out where we could, but in the end, whenever we come to these decisions, should we save a little bit of money or should we do something a little bit nicer? We always find that we get paid back for doing the nicer thing, right? These aren't going to warp on us. There's going to be no warranty call. That sounds super crisp, super strong.
Totally.
That's MTech hardware, so those are
Good
little expensive. But the solid core doors versus a hollow core, the delta is just not that much. I mean, the whole house, we're talking a difference of $1,000, $2,000, and you've seen you've seen hollow core doors literally just fall apart.
Oh yeah, totally.
Very quickly. So
and every door in the house.
Every door.
All right, so we've talked about this a little bit, but I want you to go in a little bit depth and explain a little bit about what's going on because you have a HEPA air scrubbing system in this house, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So tell me a little bit more about that. So that, if I understand correctly, is completely separate from your HVAC system.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got a dedicated setup in our attic to where we've got a filtration system that has nothing to do with the HVAC system. And that's really important because the reason is a lot of time our HVAC system isn't even running, right? And so we've got, kids coming in and out, doors open, infiltration, allergens, pollen. We live in Houston. We're next to a highway, there's a lot of particulate matter that's really small. And so if your HVAC system isn't even running, what sort of filtration are you getting?
Right.
So we wanted to bring the filtration to where we'd have control of it anytime we wanted to. So it works with a switch, but we can also retrofit that switch with a timer, kind of like your Christmas lights.
Sure.
So you can just run it, say 2 hours a day, whenever you want to, maybe even when you're not home.
Right. And so you still have filtration for your HVAC system, like you have a media filter right up there, right? Okay, so that is going to filter out anything from getting into the HVAC system, but your HEPA scrubber is what is going to filter the air that you're breathing.
Yeah, and it's also a higher grade of filter because if you run into a lot of trouble whenever you put HEPA and MERV 16s on your HVAC system. Your HVAC system works worse the better your filter is. It moves less air. Right. So we want that filter on the HVAC system to protect the actual unit, but we want to be careful that we don't put such a large filter on it that it wears out those motors.
But with the separate system, you can put a very good filter on it that filter out even the tiniest little particulates.
Yeah. So to give you an idea on the pressure that it is different than a media filter, A media filter might be a 0.01 inches of water column, not to get too technical,
Right.
but the HEPA can go up to 2 inches of water column. So the pressure delta is 20x what your media filter is.
Yeah.
So that's why
Big
you don't
difference.
see any of those on your normal HVAC
Right,
systems.
right. That's really cool and really unique stuff. All right, Ryan. So we're up here in the attic space now, and I'm seeing this stuff sprayed in the rafters. Now, my following has a pretty good understanding that I'm not the biggest fan or advocate for spray foam insulation. However, with that being said, uh, the methods at which you have taken to build this house to manage water intrusion, this is what I feel like separates what you're doing from what the production builders are doing, where they are just spraying foam in an attic and calling it sealed, and they still have the same risk basically for moisture intrusion that any of the rest of their houses have. And so while this is going to hold up very well from a performance standpoint as far as insulating a home, I wonder where the water goes, because they have not put a priority on water management. So can you
Sure.
tell me some of the things that you did that make that differentiate you from what they're doing, I guess?
Sure. So architecture drives this as well, right? So in this house, we have a really complicated roof structure, right? So let's just start from the beginning about not having insulation on the ground, right?
Okay.
So a priority to me is to get all of this to be in conditioned space, to have all my ducts in the conditioned space. That's really important from a comfort perspective and from a condensation
And I can
perspective,
understand
right?
that. Yeah.
So if we've got 55-degree air running through ducts and we get outside hot, humid Houston air touching it, that's your mold recipe right
Right.
there, right? So from a risk perspective, I'm making the decision to move the insulation from the floor to the attic or to
Right.
the ceiling, to the roof decking, right? Now I have to use spray foam just because it's really complicated with all of these different pitches of
Oh
the
yeah.
roof, right? And so when people say, how do you deal with the water? I say, build a really good roof.
Right.
And so we don't just put on a roof like what you might be typically used to seeing. We put a lot of measures into our roof and the processes to make sure we don't get water leaks from the very beginning. We use the fortified design standards. Um, and what that includes is basically a sealed roof deck. All right. So that's before you put shingles on, before you put underlayment on. Every single one of our panels in our roof of the OSB, all the seams are taped, right? So
Okay.
if you ever have a bad hurricane, bad storm, you lose underlayment, you lose shingles, you're still protected from water getting in here. We go ahead and add an underlayment on top of the taped decking. And then we try to minimize roof penetrations.
Okay.
So in our market in Houston, where we don't have big snow loads, we get a ton of penetrations. An average house in our area might have 20, 30
Right.
roof jacks, vent jacks, everything, just a bunch of holes in your
Right.
roof, right?
Every single one of them are potential for moisture intrusion.
And
That's where it
that's
comes
where
from.
it all happens, right? And those are all painted. UV's high here, so that paint
Totally.
chalks off in a
Yep.
year or two. So it's maintenance every year. So we try to minimize roof penetrations.
So how many do you have on this house?
This house has five,
5 roof penetrations.
five in total.
You had told me about other homes that you're building that have how many?
Everything after this house has zero.
0 roof penetrations. And so you are just managing water intrusion from the moment you start building what is underneath the shingles.
Yeah.
The roof structure is built to a point where you are managing water intrusion from the start.
Sure.
And so that's what makes spray foam in a house like this very much different than a house that is in a production build right now. Now, do you supply air return and supply up here to the attic space?
Yeah, as of 2021, that's actually code.
Okay, yeah, I knew that it was coming up. It's not everyone has adopted it
Yep.
yet, but I mean, I always encourage in my reports. I encourage people with this system to have that. Of course, your system has to be designed for it,
Sure.
but it should be designed for it anyway, because our thermal envelope is from here to the floor anyway.
Yeah.
And so this is technically considered conditioned space, whether you're putting
Sure.
return and supply up here or not. So yeah, I figured you did, but I just wanted to ask that.
Yeah, what's nice about this being in conditioned space, this is a comfortable place to be.
Totally.
I go in attics all the time in Houston where it's 135, 140 degrees. I can't stay up there more than, I don't know how you do it sometimes. It's bad.
It's hard. It is bad.
I'm here, the modeling says it's about 10 degrees difference. I'd recommend to people, just for a risk perspective, buy one of those little $7 hygrometers.
Mhm.
on Amazon. It'll
Mhm.
show up the same day.
Yeah.
Little temp, little humidity sensor. Put it up in your attic. Go look at it. See what it's doing. In my house, my attic typically doesn't get any hotter than 75 degrees on the worst day of the year
That's
in
awesome.
Houston. And you think that this is inefficient, that it makes to where you're ACing more volume. But what it does is it eliminates all the risk of duct leakage.
Got it.
And so nobody installs ducts perfectly,
Right, right.
ever,
Because if a
right?
duct leaks, it's leaking into conditioned space.
So it's really not a
It's
problem.
not
There's
really doing anything.
actually standards that allow duct leakage to be double than if this insulation was on the floor and this is all leaking to the outside
Right, because
space,
it's not
right?
going to condensate like it would
There's
in
no condensation. So in the end, it's all conditioned space. It's comfortable and it gets rid of that condensation mold risk. And so that's why I like to use spray foam in the attics, and it performs really, really well. I get some comments online about that doing things to the shingles.
Mhm.
And so I've done this in certain houses and we've not done it in other houses. At least my experience so far is the shingles are lasting longer
Hmm.
whenever we're doing this.
Well, because the heat factor.
My guess is because our attic is 75 degrees
Right.
instead of being 130 degrees.
Right.
So the argument is that this cooks the shingles.
Right.
But I don't see it with empirical data, at least in our market.
Yeah. So for those of you that think that I hate foam insulation, and I do, but it's really not as much as me hating foam insulation. It's as much as me hating the way homes are constructed, and that this can actually be a problem if it's not managed from the get-go. But over here at Brick House Design, that's not how they're doing things. Doing things a lot different over here. All right, Ryan, so I see these exhaust ducts coming from bathrooms, these exhaust fans, that the ductwork leading out here, but I know you only got 5 roof penetrations. So what can you tell me about where these are going?
Yeah, and it's part of our path to minimize roof penetrations. And so we utilize the soffits to basically take all those out. And you have to plan for this a little bit in advance. You know, you need to have the parts there because they're non-standard parts. Your HVAC company is not going to have them, but you also need to make sure in the design that your overhang is enough to actually take that vent out through the soffit. In our future houses, we're actually tying all these together through the exhaust port in an ERV. But let me show you how we did it in this house.
Okay.
So overhangs are super critical in our climate where we get a lot of rain. This is larger than normal. We're almost 3 feet right here, but you need a large enough overhang to be able to put these soffit vents in right here. The reason that you didn't see it in the previous video is we have a 15-12 roof pitch. So when your roof pitch is a little bit lower, that's kind of what controls the overhang. But we've got this, they're all super clean. You can go out here and inspect them. We just came out here on a window. We're not on a ladder. It's very safe to do it. And it's a clean solution that worked really well for this case.
And eliminates the roof penetration. So that's
no
awesome.
roof penetrations. That's right. No leaks right here.
This dog is really upset about how well this house is built. So sorry, bud. But these are our roof penetrations. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm seeing 4. There must be one over on the other
On
side.
the back side over there.
Oh, I see. There's another one over there.
That's the grill, so that doesn't count. That's outside the envelope.
We're not going to count that one. But these shingles are pretty awesome, Ryan. So I was noticing these out the window, but they look fantastic. I thought this was a 50-year roof, but you're saying that you don't think that it is.
I know it's at least 30. There might be a lifetime warranty on these. They're not class 4, but we use these shingles on every one of our houses. And I find they look beautiful. They mimic slate. And they just look different, and it helps us differentiate our product. We spend a little bit extra money on the capping shingles that you see on all the ridges, and of course all the extra stuff that went in with the decking, the sealed decking, and the underlayment before you even get to the shingles.
All right, so we've been here on top of the house. Now let's go take a look under the house and see what's going on down there. What do you think?
That's where all the magic happens.
Let's do it.
So we're coming into the encapsulated crawl space here, and I leave this little hygrometer right here just so it tests. But there's our RH band down here. And I haven't been down here for maybe a month, but we're 48% RH, ranging from 37 to 57, and we're at 70.5 degrees. So we're the same conditions here in the crawl space as we are in the first story.
That's insane. That's awesome. All right, let's get in here. All right, Ryan, so now we're down here in the crawl space. Like you said, it's a nice, comfortable 70 degrees down here. You could just literally hang out down here. But we got work to do. We got things to show you. So let's show them a couple of things. So I think, first of all, things that interest me, it looks like this entire joist system and everything down here has been treated with a BoraCare treatment to try to prevent termites, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then also we have these termite shields, or these metal caps that go on top of your piers here that are to prevent termites from going any further if they crawl up the piers as well. So we got a couple of layers of termite protection down here that I really like. What are some features that you like about down here?
Probably something that you don't see standard is behind you. You know, underneath all this rock right here, all the rock is here for is to maintain our vapor barrier
Okay.
below us, right? So we get a lot of
Holds it down.
ground moisture that if we don't do anything, that ground moisture will just come right up through our slabs typically. And so even though we don't have a slab here, that moisture will come right up through here. It'll go right through the subfloor into conditioned space. So we need to block out all the vapor coming from our ground. So if you look behind you here, you can actually see the black poly.
I see it.
And so we're overlapped 6 inches and also taped at the seams. And it's a continuous layer of black poly throughout the entire crawl space. And it's sloped behind us here. We've actually got a drain.
Okay, yeah, see.
And so everything here, just in case there's ever a water event, right? Water has an ability to get to the drain and get out to the street.
Right. And one thing is, and this is particular for pier and beam houses, but especially this one with this huge amount of access, is you've got access to your plumbing.
Yeah.
So if there's a problem, you can get down here and fix it. Or if you need to move something around or want to change something up, I mean, you actually have access to do that. Traditionally out here, most of the homes are on slabs, and if you got a problem down there, you got a big problem down there.
Big problem. I think that the under slab plumbing problem is the single most expensive repair that we have in our market.
I was going to go with foundation repair, but it's pretty much the same, right?
Well, here's the problem. Whenever you do foundation repair, you detach all those connections to the plumbing, so it becomes a plumbing repair in addition to your foundation repair.
Right. Bad stuff. Yeah, for sure. Well, this is excellent, especially for accessibility, and it's easy to get in. You left a nice big opening for us to get into. I do these pier and beam homes every now and again. Even if I can get underneath the house, I can barely get around down there. And then if you can't, it's completely miserable. But this one, obviously very nice and open. Easy to get around down here, easy to access everything. I see the spray foam all along here. So, man, yeah, really good job of controlling the temperature in here and everything else. So, yeah, this is fantastic, man. This is the nicest crawl space I've been in.
It's the nicest crawl space I've ever been in as well either. But that's why, when you came into the crawl space, we tested. And we're continually testing how this area is performing because we're doing it a little bit different than what you don't see encapsulated crawl spaces in Houston.
No.
And so we've had that temp and humidity sensor there for 10 months. So we've watched it.
Yeah.
And we've also got abilities to put additional controls down here if we need to. There's actually a dehumidifier right there.
I saw that.
And that just drains to the drain in the middle. So in the event, even though we're already at 48% RH, we're performing exactly with the first story. But in the event there's a scenario where it spikes down here, we've got additional equipment right here.
Excellent.
Our history actually comes from remodeling.
Yeah.
And so we've done a ton of remodeling. And so when you have issues, especially slab on grade, I know what a pain in the butt those are to fix and how expensive they are. So like suspending all the plumbing like this was just an idea to be like, well, why would we bury it if we can have access to all of it right here? So if you ever need to snake the line, there's access. If you ever have a damaged area, you got a $300 coupling fix instead of a $30,000 tunnel job. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing more houses built like this.
Good stuff, man. All right, so wrapping things up, there's one thing that I wanted to mention. Ryan and I actually met in Colorado. We live really close to one another, but in Houston is obviously a really big place, and it's hard, even though that we're in the same area, it's still, I'm over an hour away from him, and it's hard for me to get down here. Plus, I stay busy, you stay busy, but we didn't even know who each other were until we met in Colorado at an event that Sashco put on called Zero Failures. And we met up there, realized we're real close to one another, and decided to make a little bit of video content. So maybe we'll do a little bit of that in the future. Ryan, thanks for having me out here. The house is beautiful.
Thanks for coming out.
Guys, by the way, this house is for sale. So if anybody's interested, this house right now is currently on the market. All right, you guys, Matt with Texas Edge Home Inspections, Ryan Rush with Brick House Design. We're going to sign out here and like, share, subscribe, all of that stuff, and we'll catch you on the next.